Millionaire visited retirement home to make donation and found his father who had been missing for 30 years. Michael Bennett took a deep breath as he entered Golden Sunrise Retirement Home, the oldest facility of its kind in Denver. He was only there to fulfill a formality, delivering a donation check that would improve his company's image. That's when his world stopped. In room 307, lying on a simple bed, was William Bennett, his father, who had vanished without a trace 3 decades ago. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you here to visit someone?" asked the nurse accompanying him, not noticing how the businessman had suddenly gone pale. Michael opened his mouth, but no words came out. How could he explain that he had just found the ghost that had haunted his thoughts since he was 18? The man in the bed, now aged and frail, smiled at him as if he were a stranger. "I'm just touring the facility," he managed to stammer, stepping back slightly. The nurse nodded and continued the tour while Michael fought to keep his composure. His heart, accustomed to cold, calculated decisions in the business world, now beat erratically. There was no denying it. This was his father. The same man who had once left to buy cigarettes and never returned, leaving his mother with 3 young children and a mountain of debt. "This is Mr. William. He's been with us for 2 years. Unfortunately, he has a condition that affects his recent memory, but he remembers the past quite well," the nurse explained. Unaware of how her words struck Michael like arrows, the businessman completed the visit like an automaton, signing the donation check and quickly saying his goodbyes. Inside his luxury car, with the driver waiting for instructions, he finally let the tears fall. 30 years of unanswered questions. 30 years of wondering what had happened. And now there he was, the man who had left a shattered family behind, peaceful in a retirement home as if nothing had ever happened. "Where to, sir?" asked the driver. Michael wiped his face and straightened his tie. "To the office. I have a lot to take care of." In truth, he had no idea what to do. His first instinct was to tell his sisters about the discovery, but something held him back. He needed to understand first. He needed to find out why his father had abandoned them, and most of all, he needed to decide whether that man still deserved to be called a father. The next day, unable to focus on work, Michael cancelled all his meetings and returned to the retirement home. This time, he introduced himself as a volunteer interested in hearing the residents' life stories. The director of Golden Sunrise was delighted that such an important businessman cared about the residents' well-being and quickly arranged a badge for him. "Mr. William loves telling stories," she remarked, unaware of the time bomb she had just activated. "Just be careful. Sometimes he mixes up a few details." Michael found his father sitting in an armchair, gazing out the window. He seemed smaller than Michael remembered, more fragile. His hair, once as dark as Michael's, was now completely white. "Good morning, Mr. William. May I sit with you?" The elderly man turned slowly and smiled, a smile Michael hadn't seen in decades. "Of course, young man. It's always nice to have company. You're new here, aren't you?" "Yes, I'm a volunteer. I enjoy listening to stories." William laughed, a hoarse chuckle that stirred buried memories. "Stories? I've got plenty. I've lived quite a life. Some good parts, some not so good." Michael sat down, his heart racing. How could he bring up the past without revealing who he was? He decided to take it slow. "Do you have any family?" William's expression changed instantly. A veil of sadness covered his eyes. "I did. Or do. I don't know anymore. 3 wonderful children and a wife who was worth her weight in gold." He paused painfully. "But I lost them." "What do you mean?" Michael asked, his throat dry. "It's a long story, young man, and not a pretty one." "I have time," Michael insisted, unable to contain his anxiety. William took a deep breath, as if preparing to carry a heavy burden. "I was a partner in a construction company. We were growing. Everything was going well. My wife, Elizabeth, took care of the house and the kids while I worked to give them the best." His eyes welled up. "My oldest son, Michael, was just like me. Stubborn, determined. He had a bright future. The girls, Sarah and Emily, were the sunshine of our home." Michael swallowed hard upon hearing his own name. His father remembered them. What happened? "I trusted the wrong person," My partner, Richard Harrington. He was more than a partner, he was like a brother to me. William's voice trembled. I found out he was embezzling money from the company, making side deals. When I confronted him, he threatened me, said he had fake evidence that would frame me for fraud and that I'd go to prison. Michael felt his stomach drop. Richard Harrington. The name wasn't unfamiliar to him. I was innocent, but he had powerful connections. He said if I didn't disappear, he wouldn't just ruin my reputation, he'd make sure my family suffered. The consequences. William wiped away a stubborn tear. I was a coward. Instead of fighting, I chose to vanish. I thought it'd be better for them to believe I'd abandoned them than to see their father unjustly imprisoned or worse. A deep pain shot through Michael's chest. All those nights, his mother cried herself to sleep. All the birthdays he waited for his father to show up. The shame he felt at school when people asked about his family. And you never tried to reach out to them again? William shook his head, looking even smaller. The first few years I tried to keep tabs from afar. I heard Elizabeth got a job, that the kids were in school. Later, I moved to the south. Coast worked any job I could find, sent money anonymously when I could. Never knew if they got it. He paused. Years later, when I finally gathered the courage to go back and explain, I found out Elizabeth had passed. The kids were grown, living their own lives. I thought it'd be selfish of me to show up and reopen old wounds. What could I offer after so long? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Out. Now back to the story. Then Michael said nothing. His thoughts were spinning. Richard Harrington, now he remembered. He was the man who'd shown up at his mother's funeral, offering condolences and later, an internship at his investment firm. The same man who'd become his mentor, guiding him in the business world until Michael could start his own venture. The same man who to this day was his biggest investor. Do you have a picture of them? Michael asked, trying to keep his voice steady. William smiled sadly and pointed to the nightstand. There, in the drawer. It's my treasure. With trembling hands, Michael opened the drawer and found an old worn wallet. Inside, a yellowed photo. William, much younger, hugging a beautiful woman, his mother, and 3 smiling children. He recognized himself at around 10, and his sisters, Sarah and Emily, at 8 and 6. They're beautiful, aren't they? William said, pride in his voice. I always wonder how they are now, if they're happy, if they'd forgive me if they knew the truth. Michael handed the photo back, unable to speak. A nurse appeared at the door, announcing it was time for William's medication. Michael took the chance to say goodbye, promising to return another day. He left the retirement home in shock. Everything he'd believed for 30 years had been a lie. His father hadn't abandoned them out of selfishness or irresponsibility. He'd been threatened, manipulated, and worst of all by the man Michael now considered almost like a father. On his way back, he called his assistant. Jennifer, I need all the information you can find about Richard Harrington and the construction company he owned in the 90s, and reschedule my week. I'll need time. In the following days, Michael kept visiting William at the retirement home, growing more engrossed in his stories. Without revealing his identity, he slowly pieced together the puzzle of his father's life. He learned that after leaving them, William had lived for years in poor conditions, working odd jobs along the south coast, that he'd tried to start over multiple times, but the guilt over abandoning his family always consumed him, that he'd suffered a stroke at 65 and, with no known family, had been placed in the retirement home by social workers. Meanwhile, the information Jennifer uncovered about Richard Harrington was disturbing. The old construction company had indeed gone bankrupt shortly after William's disappearance, but Richard had used his connections to open an investment firm that quickly prospered. There were signs of irregularities, but nothing that could be proven after so long. On the 5th day of his visits, Michael was surprised to find his father accompanied by a young nurse he didn't recognize. This is Amanda, she just started today. William introduced her cheerfully. She's such a sweetheart. The nurse smiled and extended her hand to Michael. Mr. William has told me about the volunteer who loves listening to his stories. It's very kind of you to spend time with our residents. There was something in her gaze that unsettled Michael. as if she could see right through him. After William dozed off during their conversation, Amanda walked Michael to the exit. "It's amazing how much you two look alike," she remarked, casually. Michael froze. "What do you mean?" "You and Mr. William. Same expression when you're thinking, same facial structure." She smiled. "Almost like father and son." "Coincidence?" Michael muttered nervously. "Lots of people look alike, of course." Amanda didn't press, but her eyes said she wasn't convinced. "You know, Mr. William always talks about his children, especially the oldest. Says he'd be proud if he knew the man he'd become." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "He doesn't even know me." "Doesn't he?" Amanda raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. It was Sarah, his older sister. "Michael, we need to talk. It's urgent." Her tone made it clear something was wrong. After a quick goodbye to Amanda, Michael drove to his sister's house located in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Denver. Sarah was a university professor, a widow, and had spent much of her life caring for their sick mother after their father left. When he arrived, he found not only Sarah, but also Emily, his youngest sister, who lived in Chicago and rarely visited Denver. Both were seated in the living room with serious expressions. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah got straight to the point. "Why have you been visiting Dad at the retirement home without telling us?" Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "How?" "Emily has a friend who works in administration at Golden Sunrise Retirement Home," Sarah explained, visibly upset. "She recognized your name on the visitor log. It took her a minute to connect the dots before she called us." "I was going to tell you." Michael defended himself, sinking into a chair. "I was just trying to make sense of it all first." "Make sense of what?" Emily snapped, always the most emotional of the three. "That after 30 years of destroying our family, he shows up as some helpless old man in a nursing home. What a coincidence." "It's not like that," Michael began. "Then what is it like?" as Sarah cut in. Because the last time we talked about him, you said if you saw him on the street, you'd walk right past without recognizing him. And now I find out you've been visiting him daily, pretending to be a volunteer?" Michael took a deep breath. There was no more hiding. He told them everything. The shock of recognizing his father during his visit to the retirement home, the revealing conversations, the story about Richard Harrington and the threats. "Don't you understand? He didn't abandon us because he wanted to. He was forced to protect us." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "And you believe that?" "Michael, he had 30 years to come back and tell us this story. 30 years while Mum worked 2 jobs to support us. 30 years while you gave up college to work and help at home. 30 years while Sarah took care of Mum in the hospital until her last day. And now we're supposed to believe he was some misunderstood hero?" "I'm not saying it was right," Michael argued. "I'm saying maybe it's not as simple as we thought." Sarah, always the most level-headed, stayed silent for a moment. "Even if it's true, Michael, what do you plan to do? Reveal you're his son? Bring him home? He didn't even recognize you." "No. His recent memory is shaky, but he remembers the past perfectly." "And did you verify this story about Richard Harrington?" Sarah asked. "I'm looking into it, but there's something you both need to know." Michael hesitated. "Richard is my biggest investor. He gave me my first internship, funded my company in the early years. If this story is true..." His sisters stared at him, shocked. "You're saying the man who destroyed our family is the same one who helped you build your empire?" Emily sounded incredulous. "Seems that way. And if it's true, I need to find out why. Why would he push our father away and then take me under his wing?" A heavy silence fell over the 3 siblings. The implications were too disturbing. "I need concrete proof before confronting him," Michael continued. "If he really did this, if he manipulated our lives like that..." "What will you do?" Sarah asked, worried. "Richard Harrington is a powerful man. If he really threatened Dad back then, what's stopping him from doing something worse now?" Michael had no answer. His mind was reeling. His entire professional life was tied to Richard. His success, his fortune, his reputation, all of it bore the old investor's influence. "For now, I'll keep visiting Dad and investigating quietly. I need you both to trust me and keep this secret." You really think we wouldn't want to see him? Emily asked, tears in her eyes. After everything, he's still our father. Let's do this right, Michael said. First, I confirm the story. Then we decide together how to proceed. Reluctantly, his sisters agreed to wait. Before leaving, Sarah grabbed her brother's arm. Be careful, Michael. It's not just Dad's reputation at stake now. If Richard Harrington finds out we know, he won't, Michael assured her, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The next morning, as he arrived at the office, Michael was met with unsettling news. Richard Harrington had called an emergency meeting to discuss the future of his investments in the company. He seemed agitated, Jennifer reported. Said it's about the Big Miami project. The Big Miami project was the construction of a business complex that would be the crowning achievement of Michael's career. Richard had promised a massive investment, one that would double the company's market value. The final contracts were set to be signed the following week. When Richard walked into the meeting room, Michael knew immediately something was wrong. The old investor, usually calm and calculated, looked uneasy. Michael, my boy, he greeted, forcing a smile. We need to talk about some changes to the Miami project. Changes? Michael tried to keep his composure. I thought everything was settled. There have been some complications. Richard adjusted his tie. I'll need to move up the contract signing. Can we do it today? The request was strange. Contracts of that magnitude usually went through detailed legal reviews. Richard, that's not possible. The legal team is still finalizing the terms. The old businessman frowned. I'm offering you the biggest opportunity of your career, Michael. Don't make me reconsider. There was a veiled threat in those words. Michael felt a chill. It was the same tone his father had described. We have to follow procedure, he insisted. But I'll prioritize the process, I promise. Richard studied him for a few seconds as if weighing his sincerity. 3 days, Michael. Not a single one more. I have other investors interested. After the investor left, Michael called Jennifer. I need access to all the old files from Harrington and Bennett Construction and hire a private investigator to look into Richard Harrington's financial activity around the time the company went bankrupt. Sir, isn't that a bit extreme? Jennifer asked, surprised. Just do as I ask, Jennifer, and keep this absolutely confidential. Richard's unusual behavior, combined with his father's story, was making Michael increasingly suspicious. Why the sudden rush? What was Richard afraid of? That afternoon, when he visited the retirement home, he found Amanda waiting for him at the reception. Your father's been agitated today, she informed him, walking beside him. He had a confused episode this morning, talking about someone coming for him. I had to increase his medication. He's not my father, Michael replied automatically, but without conviction. Amanda gave a half smile. Of course. Either way, he specifically asked for the storytelling man. I think your presence calms him. Entering the room, Michael found William sitting in his armchair, staring fixedly out the window. He seemed more alert than during previous visits. I knew you'd come, the old man said without turning. He'll come too. Who, Mr. William? Richard. William turned slowly. He always shows up when something important is about to happen. Michael felt his heart race. Richard Harrington? Has he been visiting you? William seemed confused for a moment, as if trying to organize his thoughts. Not exactly visiting, but I know he watches me. He's always known where I was. A flash of clarity passed through his eyes. That's why I never went back to my family. Even after all these years, he still has power over me. What do you mean? Michael pulled up a chair, sitting close. What does he have against you? William lowered his gaze, ashamed. It's not what he has against me, it's what I did. The confession took Michael by surprise. What did you do? William struggled with the words. I'm not as innocent as I said. Not entirely. In the beginning, when the company was growing, Richard convinced me to take part in some schemes. Nothing too serious, just a few altered documents to secure contracts. I agreed, thinking of my family, wanting to give them comfort. Michael's throat went dry. But then the schemes grew. Richard wanted more, always more. When I realized how deep the hole was, I tried to back out. That's when he showed me documents that incriminated me far more than him. He said if I didn't disappear, he'd use them not just to put me in prison, but to destroy any chance of my family living a decent life. William covered his face with trembling hands. I was weak, Michael. So weak. The use of his name made Michael freeze. How do you know my name? William smiled sadly. You think I wouldn't recognize my own son? You have your mother's eyes, and my stubborn streak. Since when? Since the first day. William reached out, touching his son's face. But I thought it was better to pretend. I figured you needed time to process everything, and I didn't deserve your immediate attention. Tears streamed down his wrinkled face. Forgive me, son. I know I don't deserve it, but I ask anyway. Michael couldn't hold back his own tears. Years of hurt and resentment seemed to melt away at the sight of the man's fragility. Why did you never try to tell us the truth, even from afar? I did. Once. William took a deep breath. When your mother fell ill, I sent a letter explaining everything, but I don't think she ever got it. Richard had people watching you, intercepting any attempt at contact. And why did he take an interest in me later? Why offer me that internship? To torture me, maybe? William shook his head. Or to control you too. Richard has always been obsessed with controlling people, especially those who might threaten him someday. A heavy silence fell between father and son. Michael tried to process it all. Richard's conspiracy, his father's weakness, the lost years they could never get back. Do your sisters know? William asked hopefully. Yes. They found out about my visits. Do they hate me? The question was simple but filled with pain. They're confused, hurt, they need time. Time is something I may not have much of, William murmured. The doctors say my heart is weak. Every day is a gift. Michael held his father's hand. I'll bring them to see you. But first, I need to deal with Richard. If he's as dangerous, as you say, we have to be careful. Don't confront him directly, William warned. He has powerful connections, people in positions of authority. That's how he kept me away from you for so long. Don't worry. I'm more careful than you were. William smiled proudly. You've become a successful man. I always knew you would. How could you know? Michael asked, puzzled. I kept track from afar. Newspaper clippings, news stories. When you started your company, I sent a small anonymous gift, remember? A silver pen with your initials. Michael's eyes widened. The pen was his most prized possession, a mysterious gift he'd received on the day his first office opened. He'd always assumed it was from a client trying to make a good impression. That was you? I couldn't risk showing myself, but I wanted you to know somehow that someone was proud of your achievements. The moment was interrupted by a nurse entering to administer William's nightly medication. Michael said goodbye, promising to return the next day with a plan. On the way home, his mind raced. He needed solid proof against Richard, something to neutralize any threat he posed, but how could he get it after so long? The answer came from an unexpected source. When he arrived at his apartment, Jennifer was waiting with a folder. Sir, I found something important about the old construction company. Inside the folder were documents that appeared to be accounting records. Where did you get these? Michael asked, impressed. Remember Richard's longtime secretary, Mrs. Thompson? She retired last year, but I stayed in touch. When I mentioned we were looking for old documents to settle an issue, she told me about files Richard ordered destroyed, but she kept copies just in case. Jennifer paused. She never liked his methods. The documents were damning. They proved Richard had systematically embezzled funds from the construction company using shell corporations. More importantly, they showed that William's signature had been forged on several incriminating documents. This clears my father's name, murmured Michael, but it doesn't explain why Richard got close to me afterward. About that, Jennifer hesitated. There's something else. Among the papers, I found a newspaper clipping, an article about your mother's funeral. The clipping showed a photo of young Michael standing by the casket, visibly shaken. Next to it, handwritten, were the words, "Time to act. The boy has potential." The revelation hit like a punch to the gut. Richard hadn't helped him out of kindness or remorse. He had coldly calculated, seeing his former partner's son as an opportunity to expand his business. Maybe he feared that Michael, as he grew older, would uncover the truth and expose him. By keeping him close under his influence, he could control the situation. "Jennifer, I need you to do one more thing. Contact my lawyers and have them carefully review the contracts for the Miami project. I want to know exactly what Richard is trying to push through so urgently." The next morning, as he prepared to visit his father and sisters, Michael received an urgent call from Amanda. "Your father had an episode. He's asking for you. And there's more." She lowered her voice. "A man was here earlier trying to transfer him to another facility. He presented documents, claimed to be his legal guardian." "Richard?" "I don't know his name. An older gentleman, well-dressed. The director asked for time to verify the documents and he left but said he'd be back. I'm on my way. Don't let anyone take my father out of that home, understand?" Michael drove like a madman to the Golden Sunrise retirement home. On the way, he called his sisters, asking them to meet him there as soon as possible. He also alerted his lawyers, instructing them to prepare an emergency motion ensuring William would stay at the home. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. When he arrived, he found Amanda waiting at the entrance. He's in his room, but he's not well. The stress from the confrontation with that man worsened his condition. Michael rushed to the room and found his father in a state of agitation he'd never seen before. William was pacing back and forth, muttering incoherently. "Dad?" Michael called softly. William turned, eyes wide. "Michael, he was here. Richard was here. He said he was taking me away, that I'd talked too much." "No one's taking you anywhere," Michael assured him, trying to calm his father. "I'm here now." "You don't understand," William insisted, gripping his son's arm. "He knows I told you everything. He said he'd destroy you too, that he has something big planned." "The Miami project," Michael ventured. William nodded frantically. "He talked about it, said it would be your downfall, that you'd fall just like I did." At that moment, Sarah and Emily appeared at the bedroom door. Seeing his daughters, William froze. "My girls." Sarah stepped forward, her expression a mix of shock and emotion. "Dad?" Emily, always the more emotional one, began to cry silently. The moment was interrupted by the sharp ring of Michael's phone. It was Jennifer. "Sir, the lawyers reviewed the contracts. There's a hidden clause in the last pages. If the project doesn't meet the exact timeline, Richard can take majority control of the company at a fixed price far below market value." "And what's the problem?" "The timeline has impossible deadlines. The first phase requires environmental approvals that would take at least 6 months. You'd only have 3. "He's setting me up," Michael concluded, "just like he did with my father." "There's more. We found evidence that Richard is already negotiating the sale of his company to an international group, as if he were already the owner. Everything made sense now. Richard never intended to help Michael. Every step from the initial internship to the major investment in the Miami project was part of a plan to take control of his empire. And now, upon discovering that Michael had found his father and could expose his past crimes, Richard was speeding up the process. Hanging up the phone, Michael found his family watching him with worried expressions. "It's Richard, isn't it?" asked Sarah. "Is he threatening you like he did with your father?" "He's trying to take my company," Michael confirmed. "And he'll probably try to silence all of us if he succeeds." William sat on the bed, suddenly appearing more lucid and determined. "We can't let him do this. Not again. Not to my son." Emily, who had been silently observing, stepped closer to her father and took his hand. "Do you have proof against him? From the construction company days?" "Some documents," William replied. "I kept them in a safe place before I disappeared. I never used them because I feared for your safety." "Where are they?" Michael asked hopefully. "In the basement of our old house, under a loose floorboard near the boiler." The siblings exchanged glances. "The house was sold years ago, Dad," Sarah informed him. "A developer bought the land and built an apartment building." The disappointment was clear on William's face. "Then there's no way to prove—" "Maybe there is," Michael interjected. "The documents Jennifer found, combined with your testimony—" "It won't be enough," Sarah cut in, ever pragmatic. "Richard is powerful, well-connected. We need something more damning, something he can't deny." Amanda, who had been watching from the doorway, cleared her throat to get their attention. "Sorry to interrupt, but if you're talking about the old yellow building on Maple Street, the developer is the same one that runs this retirement home, and the original basement was left intact. It's now used as a storage room for files." The four of them stared at her, surprised. "How do you know that?" Emily asked. "I've worked here for 5 years. I know every corner." Amanda smiled. "And my father was the engineer in charge of the land conversion. He always mentioned how they kept the original basement structure because it was so well built." Michael felt a surge of hope. "Could you take us there?" "Not now," Amanda replied, checking her watch. "There's a board meeting happening in the main hall. All the administrative staff are busy. But after 5, when the shift change causes confusion, we can try." "We don't have time," Michael pressed. "Richard scheduled the contract signing for tomorrow morning. If I sign, I lose everything. If I don't, he can pull his investment and ruin the company anyway." "What if we give him exactly what he wants?" Sarah suggested thoughtfully. Everyone turned to her. "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "Schedule the signing. Let him think. He's won. Meanwhile, we retrieve the evidence from the basement. When he's about to finalize his plan, we reveal everything." "That's risky," William warned. "Richard isn't easily intimidated." "We have an advantage you didn't have before, Dad," Sarah argued. "There are 4 of us against 1. And Michael has resources, influence." After debating for a while, they agreed to Sarah's plan. Michael called Richard, confirming the signing for the next morning. The old investor didn't hide his satisfaction. "Wise decision, my boy. It'll be the biggest deal of your life." "Oh, it will be, Richard," Michael replied, holding back his anger. "An unforgettable deal." At 5:30 p.m., taking advantage of the shift change chaos, Amanda led the 4 of them through a service hallway to a metal door that led to the basement. The place was damp and poorly lit, filled with shelves of file boxes. "The part that belonged to your house is over there," Amanda pointed to a distant corner. They didn't change much of the structure. If there was a loose floorboard near the boiler, the old boiler had been replaced with a more modern heating system, but its base remained in the same spot. William, despite his age and fragile health, was determined. He knelt on the dusty floor and began examining the surrounding floorboards. After several frustrating minutes, Emily noticed something. "This one looks different," she said, pointing to a slightly misaligned board. "The color doesn't quite match the others." With effort, they managed to lift the board. In the space beneath lay a small metal box, weathered by time but still intact. William picked it up with trembling hands and handed it to Michael. "You should open it. You were always the strongest of us." Inside the box were a series of documents, some yellowed with age but perfectly legible. There were contracts with forged signatures, records of deposits into secret accounts, and, most damning of all, a letter written by Richard himself, detailing how he had manipulated the records to frame William if he didn't cooperate. "This is perfect," Michael murmured, examining the papers. "With this, we can prove not only that Richard defrauded the construction company, but that he blackmailed you into disappearing." "What now?" Emily asked. "Do we go to the police?" Michael shook his head. "If Richard has as much influence as our father says, we need to be more strategic. We'll use this tomorrow during the contract signing, when all the investors and the press are present. You're going to expose him publicly?" Sarah looked worried. "It's dangerous. It's the only way to make sure he doesn't slip away. If we do this quietly, he'll find a way to bury it." The decision was made. They would meet the next morning at Michael's company headquarters, where the signing ceremony would take place. Sarah and Emily would bring William, who insisted on being there to finally confront his former partner. That night, for the first time in 3 decades, the 4 Bennetts had dinner together. At a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town, they shared not just a meal, but memories, pain, and hopes. William, though visibly tired, seemed more alive than at any moment since reuniting with his son. "I know I can never make up for the lost years," he said, looking at each of his children. "But to be here to see what you've all become, it's more than I deserve." "Why did you never try to come back?" Emily asked, still processing everything. "Even after Mom, after she was gone?" William lowered his gaze. "Shame, mostly. As the years passed, it became harder to imagine how I'd explain it all. And I always feared Richard would carry out his threats." He paused. "But I also visited the cemetery every week for months. I always left daisies, her favorite." The three siblings exchanged surprised glances. "The mystery flowers," Sarah murmured. "We always wondered who left them." "I was there when you visited sometimes, hiding, watching from a distance." William's voice broke. "I saw you graduate, Sarah. I was at the back of the auditorium. I saw your wedding, Emily, from across the street. And when your company went public, Michael, I bought a single share just so I could say I was part of your success." Tears streamed freely down all their faces. Years of absence, of hurt, of unanswered questions, all seemed to converge in that moment. "We can't get the past back," Michael said finally, "but we can build a different future." The following morning, Michael Bennett's company headquarters was decorated for what would be one of the largest real estate deals in the country. Investors, press, and officials packed the main auditorium where tables had been set up with the contracts for the Miami project. Richard Harrington, wearing his most expensive suit, mingled with the guests, already savoring his victory. Michael arrived accompanied by his lawyers. Sarah and Emily would come separately with William, keeping a low profile until the right moment. The plan was simple. Michael would lead the ceremony as usual until the signing. Then he would make a special announcement, introducing his surprise guest, William, and revealing the evidence against Richard. Everything seemed to be going as planned until Michael received a desperate message from Emily. "Richard intercepted Dad at the entrance. They're arguing in the lobby. Come quick." Leaving his lawyers confused, Michael rushed to the elevator. When he reached the lobby, he found an alarming scene. Richard was gripping William's arm tightly, while Sarah and Emily tried to intervene. Two security guards, clearly on Richard's orders, prevented other employees from approaching. "You? Hold, fool," Richard snarled. "Do you really think you can ruin everything I've built?" "Let go of my father now," Michael ordered, stepping forward. Richard turned, surprised by the sudden arrival. His face twisted into an expression of anger and contempt. "Your father?" He let out a bitter laugh. "So you actually believe his stories? This man abandoned his family. He's a coward, a weakling." "We know the truth, Richard," Michael replied, moving cautiously closer. "We know what you did with the construction company, how you forged documents, embezzled money, blackmailed my father into disappearing." A flash of panic crossed the older businessman's eyes, quickly replaced by defiance. "Prove it?" "We can." Michael signaled to Sarah, who opened her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We have everything documented. The forged signatures, the embezzlement, even that letter you wrote detailing your threats." The color drained from Richard's face. He abruptly released William and tried to grab the envelope. "This is absurd. Fabricated documents. No one will believe you." "Why don't we test that?" Michael challenged. "Upstairs are dozens of reporters, investors, officials, people you've spent your life trying to impress. Shall we tell them your story? How you destroyed a family out of greed?" Richard looked around, weighing his options. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice low and defeated. "I want you out of my company and out of my family's life." "Forever," Michael answered. "Sell me your shares at a fair price, terminate all contracts, disappear, and waste the Miami project, millions in profits? The project will happen, without you." Richard stared at the four Bennetts, his empire crumbling before his eyes. "And if I refuse?" Michael smiled coldly. "Then we'll go straight to that auditorium and show everyone who you really are." Cornered, Richard had no choice. Right there in the lobby, Michael's lawyers prepared preliminary documents for the share transfer and the cancellation of the fraudulent contracts. Richard signed each one with contained fury, watching decades of manipulation unravel in minutes. You think you've won, he said, handing over the last signed page. But watch yourself, Michael. The business world doesn't forgive sentimentality. This family reunion will cost you dearly. Maybe, Michael replied, but some things are worth more than money, a lesson you never learned. With one last look of disdain, Richard walked out, escorted by security to his car. His era of influence over the Bennetts was over. In the auditorium, Michael Bennett announced to the audience that the project structure would change. Instead of a single majority investor, it would open to a consortium of smaller investors, ensuring greater transparency and power distribution. The initial surprise soon gave way to genuine interest, especially when Michael revealed that part of the profits would go to social projects, including the modernization of Golden Sunrise Retirement Home. I'd like to introduce the special consultant for this social project, Michael said at the end of the presentation. My father, William Bennett. William, supported by his daughters, stepped onto the stage to applause. His face glowed with emotion and pride. In the weeks that followed, the story of the Bennett family reunion became a buzzing topic in the business world. Richard Harrington, his reputation tarnished, sold most of his businesses and moved abroad. Michael's company, far from suffering from the loss of the powerful investor, thrived under the new, more transparent and ethical management model. William, his health stabilized by the best medical care money could buy, moved into a home near Sarah. He wouldn't get back the 30 lost years, but every day with his reunited family was a gift he hadn't expected to receive. On a sunny afternoon, 6 months after the confrontation with Richard, the four Bennetts gathered at the cemetery where Elizabeth, wife and mother, was buried. William placed a bouquet of daisies on the headstone. She'd be proud, Sarah said, holding her father's arm. Of all of us. Especially of you, Dad, Emily added, for finding the courage to face your mistakes. William smiled sadly. I just wish she could have known the truth, that I never meant to leave you. All. She knows, Michael said, surprising everyone. Always the family skeptic, he wasn't one to make such claims. Somehow she knows. Walking back to the cars, William held his son's arm. You know what hurts me the most? Missing the chance to advise you, to watch you grow in business. I could have taught you so much, Michael smiled. You still can. The company is expanding into new sectors. We need someone with construction experience, someone I trust completely. William's eyes widened. You can't be serious. I'm old, Michael. And after everything that happened, I'm absolutely serious. I have an office ready for you right next to mine. 3 days a week, reduced hours, enough to make up for some of the lost time. William couldn't hold back his tears. For the first time in decades, he felt his colossal mistake, his painful absence, beginning to be repaired. Not completely. Some wounds never fully heal, but enough to glimpse a different future. As they left the cemetery, a familiar figure leaned against a car. Amanda, the sharp-witted nurse who had helped gather evidence against Richard. How did you know we'd be here? Emily asked, surprised. Amanda smiled. I didn't. Actually, I came to visit my own mother. She pointed to a grave not far away. Coincidence, right? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing, Michael studied the young woman with renewed interest. Since the confrontation with Richard, Amanda had become part of the family's inner circle, visiting William regularly and helping Sarah care for him. There was something about her that always intrigued Michael, her sharpness, her inexplicable loyalty to an elderly man who, in theory, was just another patient. Would you like to join us for lunch? He asked impulsively. Amanda hesitated. I don't want to intrude on a family moment. You're practically family already, insisted Sarah, who had developed a special fondness for the nurse. Besides, you're a big part of the reason we're all together today. During lunch, at a quiet restaurant, the conversation flowed naturally. William shared stories from the past, from when the construction company was just starting out. Sarah and Emily reminisced about their childhood, some memories painful, others funny. Michael talked about his plans for the company's future, now free from Richard's toxic influence. Amanda listened with genuine interest, occasionally offering insightful remarks. At one point, as William recounted how he met Elizabeth, Amanda pulled a small worn book from her bag. "Mr. William, I found this among the belongings you brought to the retirement home. I thought you might want it back." It was a small leather-bound diary. William took it with trembling hands. "Your mother's diary," he said to his children. "She wrote in it every day. When I left home, I took it with me. It was the only way to keep her close." "Did you read it?" Emily asked, curious. "Every page, hundreds of times." William opened the diary with reverent care. "Even on my darkest days, her words gave me strength to keep going. Sarah, always the most attuned to the nuances of family dynamics, watched the interaction between Amanda and her family with growing interest. There was something about the nurse's gestures, the way she looked at William, that felt all too familiar. When Amanda stepped away briefly to take a call, Sarah leaned closer to Michael. "Have you ever wondered why she cares so much about our father? Why she went to such lengths to help us?" Michael shrugged. "She seems naturally compassionate, and maybe she saw that Dad wasn't just another abandoned old man. It's more than that," Sarah insisted. "Look at her, really look." When Amanda returned to the table, Michael studied her more closely. He noticed things he hadn't before: the shape of her eyes, identical to their mother's in photographs, her smile, reminiscent of Emily's, her small, agile hands, just like William's. Understanding washed over him like a wave. "Amanda," he began cautiously, "how long have you worked at that retirement home?" The young woman seemed surprised by the sudden shift in topic. 5 years. Why? And why did you choose that one in particular?" Amanda lowered her gaze, suddenly, uncomfortable. "It was a coincidence. I was job hunting, saw they needed nurses." "You already knew my father was there, didn't you?" Michael pressed. "Before I showed up. Before any of us." A tense silence fell over the table. William, who had been watching the exchange with confusion, suddenly paled. "My God," he murmured. "How did I not see it before?" Amanda took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. "Yes, I knew. I always knew." "How?" Emily asked, still not fully grasping. "Because she sought him out," Sarah answered, the puzzle pieces finally falling into place. "Isn't that right, Amanda?" The nurse nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. "My mother told me about you when I was 15, she said, looking directly at William. She showed me an old photo, told me your full name, said you two had been close before you disappeared." William's eyes widened in recognition. "Rachel?" he whispered. "Rachel was your mother?" "Yes." Amanda wiped away a tear. "She never married. Raised me alone, always talking about the good man she'd met, who she was sure had important reasons for leaving." "Amanda, you're..." William's voice broke. "Your daughter," she finished. "My mother found out she was pregnant weeks after you disappeared. She could never find you to tell you. We have a sister." Emily seemed shocked. "Half-sister, technically," Amanda corrected. "I was born in 1993, just a few months after you lost contact with your father." Michael tried to process the revelation. A sister. While his family suffered from abandonment, another child was born, growing up without knowing her father for the same reasons. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" he asked, no accusation in his voice, just curiosity. "At first, I just wanted to find him," Amanda said, looking at William. "I spent years searching until I discovered he was at the retirement home. I got the job there specifically to get closer, to understand what kind of man you were before revealing myself. And when I showed up," Michael pressed, "I was stunned. I never expected you two to reunite." She smiled faintly. "But then I saw the chance to help fix what was broken. Somehow it felt like my role, my purpose." William reached out, touching Amanda's face as if he still couldn't believe it. "You look so much like your mother. How did I not see it? You were sick when we met, and I was cautious. I didn't want to reveal myself until I was sure I'd be welcome." Sarah, always the family peacemaker, took Amanda's hand in hers. "Of course you're welcome. You're our sister, part of the family." Emily, recovering from the initial shock, impulsively hugged Amanda. "I always wanted a younger sister." "You already have a younger sister," Sarah protested, laughing. "Another younger sister," Emily corrected, not letting go. "One who didn't steal my dolls as a kid." Lunch turned into an impromptu celebration. More wine was ordered, then desserts, then coffee. The conversation flowed into the evening as Amanda finally shared her story, how she grew up hearing about the mysterious father her mother still loved, how she decided to become a nurse to help people, how her search for William became almost an obsession after her mother's death. "She never stopped believing there was an explanation," Amanda said. "She swore the man she knew would never abandon anyone without a powerful reason." "She was special," William confirmed, his eyes lost in memories. "I met Rachel when I was already separated from your mother, years later. She worked at a cafe near the temporary office I kept in Florida. It was brief, but it meant a lot. When Richard threatened me again, I had to disappear once more. I never knew." "She would have understood," Amanda assured him. "Somehow I think she always did." By evening, as they said goodbye in the parking lot, Michael held Amanda's arm. "What now? Still working at the retirement home?" She shrugged. "It's good work and I like the residents." "I have a proposal," Michael said firmly. "We're expanding the outreach program to include medical care for seniors in the community. We need someone to coordinate it." Amanda's face lit up. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a place in the family business as part of the family." In the months that followed, the 5 Bennetts, now including Amanda, settled into a new routine. Sunday dinners at Sarah's became tradition. William, his health stable and spirit renewed, spent a few hours each week at Michael's company, offering valuable advice from decades of experience. The outreach program launched by the company became a model for the industry, with Amanda leading innovative senior care initiatives. The Golden Sunrise Retirement Home, freed from its past financial struggles, transformed into a model institution with direct support from the Bennetts. On a quiet afternoon, nearly a year after the confrontation with Richard, Michael found his father gazing at the city skyline from the office next to his. "A cruise for your thoughts," said William without turning around. "Come again?" "Your thoughts. They seem valuable." Michael smiled, joining his father by the window. "I was thinking about how life takes unexpected turns. A year ago, I was a successful businessman, but completely empty inside, obsessed with results, numbers, expansion." He paused. "Now I have my family back, a sister I never knew existed, and a company stronger and more ethical than ever." "And it all started with a visit to a retirement home," William remarked. "An obligation you dreaded fulfilling." "The best investment I ever made," Michael joked. "Of all the checks I've signed in my life, that donation was the only one that truly changed something important." William placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You know what your mother always said, that in life, what really matters isn't the things we accumulate, but the connections we build. Family, friends, people we care about." "She was right," Michael said, gazing out the window at the city beyond. "She always was." That evening, as the family gathered for their weekly dinner, there was a special atmosphere in the air. A full year of reconciliation, healing, and new beginnings. Sarah had prepared William's favorite dish. Emily brought an album of old photos she'd found tucked away. Amanda, now fully part of the family, excitedly shared the success of her latest project at the community center. Looking around the table, Michael felt a wave of gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy. 30 years of absence couldn't be erased in just a few months. There were still difficult moments, painful conversations, and memories that brought tears to their eyes. But they were together finally, a family reunited, and it was all because on that fateful day, he'd decided to visit a retirement home to make a donation. The end. Dear listener, did this story touch your heart? Did you relate to the Bennetts' challenges of forgiveness and reconciliation? Leave a comment sharing what moved you most, and let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video and, most importantly, Subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.